just on vacation.
Not everyone that's in the prison that is guilty, but we have university center criminals.
The year 1816 is often referred to as the year without summer. There was frost and snow recorded as late as early August, resulting in an agricultural disaster in North America, Europe, and Asia. The change in global climatic conditions was caused by the volcanic eruption of Mount Tambora from April 5th to the 15th, 1815 in Indonesia, with a volcanic explosivity index ranking of 7, a supercolossal event that ejected immense amounts of volcanic ash into the upper atmosphere, obscuring the sun and reducing global temperatures by up to 0.7 degrees Celsius. I'm Shane. Welcome to another episode of Solutions, Answers from the People, simple solutions offered by St. Lucians. The snippet of history above is an example of climate change, but one caused by the Earth's natural processes. Nowadays, when we generally speak of climate change, we refer to changes in climatic conditions caused by human activity, or what is synonymously known as global warming and the consequences of it. Earlier this week, we recognized World Environment Day, taking the time to think back on the environment and the biggest environmental issue facing us presently, global warming and climate change. So we asked the people, what is your solution to deal with the effects of climate change as an individual? Let's hit the streets and hear what the people had to say.
No, you see, it's true. Government cannot really do anything much unless the people start themselves. We as a people have to come together and do what we need to do first. And we cannot depend on say, oh, the government this, the government that. A lot of us try to take it politically and say, oh, this government not doing anything. But then again, it's not. We cannot do that. We have to start. So in that sense, we need to be more responsible with the throwing of garbage and the way that we use perfumes and so on and so forth. We have to try and take it more naturally. That's why you see the Rastafarians and the Muslims, they're so how they are. They don't like artificial. So if we try and live better in that sense with less artificial stuff, then things would be a little better. The climate change is nothing we can do right now. It's already happening. It's already in process. So just try and better things by starting with ourselves and doing what we can, playing our part, basically.
No, the fuel consumption we should like use unleaded fuel. Fuel that will not, especially the vehicles, they need to clean the things for the black fuel not to go up. Decarbonize it.
Well, I believe that this generation is going through this learning curve, and if we don't do it now, then there will be nothing left to save. It's straightforward. I believe in the naturalness in it, and that everybody individually, but we have to come together. There's no more, how do you call it, protests. Like people have the placards and walking around and actually standing for what they believe in. There's no more of that. The government trying to clamp on that, and that's a bad move. People have the freedom to speak and say what they feel like. And the climate is ours. It's not just some people belong responsible for the climate. I mean everybody. That's not a real thing. All right?
I think that everybody should take a personal responsibility on their own part. And I mean, we're educated people, I would say. And we know what causes the hazards of using certain chemicals can do to the environment, and we should take a personal responsibility and make sure that we try to use these at a minimum, and we can also go into more economic ways of using materials like recycling certain things at home instead of buying new products. And also I would say the sprays and solutions, we can also use natural stuff instead of using the chemicals, because it's also safer for us as people, not just the environment. So
stop pollution.
Yeah, it's a very big issue, and a lot of the truth is not being told. Most people think climate change is being caused by using like freon gases and CFC gases and the way we are using the environment. But the actual problem is the universe is changing, the world is changing, and the way we are interacting with the other planetary bodies are changing. And so there's very little that we can do except to understand the change and to work with it. Of course, we have to change our lifestyle and the way we use our environment. That is very important. And if we don't correct the way we are misusing the environment, then it can be much more detrimental than it would be.
I think too much trees are cut in the islands. And this is one of the things, because it dries out the land. And just as drying the land, it changes the climate as well.
Well, to address the problem of climate change, like some people going around driving their vehicles, and you're supposed to service your vehicles so you don't have that smoke coming out into the air and polluting the air. And people need to be more aware of the environment, cleaning up the place and stuff, because a lot of people, they throw garbage anywhere, they dispose of garbage everywhere, and the mosquitoes and different stuff and rats, and so people need to take care of the environment and be more natural.
To play their part. I mean, climate change is all of us, our business. And I think if we start to look at our habits in terms of how we treat our environment, that's the starting point. We cannot always put the responsibility on government. So I believe we all have to use climate change, things that impact the climate, like energy, the use of energy, how we use even our resources, which are scarce, land, water. We have to be more cognizant of how we use it.
These were just some of the solutions from the people. We'll take a break now. When we come back, more solutions. Welcome back to Solutions. We asked the people for a solution to deal with the effects of climate change on an individual level. Let's hear what they had to say.
Okay, well, climate change is basically a change in the overall climatic patterns that are shown in various locations. Most of it is caused by the buildup of greenhouse gases, methane being the worst, and believe it or not, that comes from production of beef, because the cows release a lot of methane gas. And the secondary gas is carbon dioxide, which comes from industrialization. So that makes the solution very easy, but at the same time extremely difficult. One, we need to stop consuming beef. Vegetarian diet, so the Rastas have something there. Second thing is, we talked about industrialization. So that means we have to go back to a time where we don't have all these things, like, for example, this camera that you're using that uses high amounts of plastic into production. We need to stop driving as much, air conditioners and burning fossil fuels to have the coolness. And again, it kind of backfires, because climate change means hotter places tend to get hotter sometimes. So now you're pushing more electricity for air conditioning, and now you've sort of compounded the problem, because you need to be cool, but at the same time you're producing more of the gases that cause it to be hot. So it's a difficult solution, but it's really simple at the same time. We just have to go back to a different time, and it's hard to go back to that.
To address the issues of climate change, I think the number one thing that needs to be done in terms of, in general, is education. I think the people in general need to be educated about what is climate change, the effects of climate change, both positive and negative, and what it is they can do to help prevent climate change. So for instance, in terms of our usual everybody driving to work and everybody's going the same area, we can carpool, or maybe we can use means maybe in terms of using a bicycle. Also, in terms of garbage, we need to reuse, recycle, and of course, use compost in terms of food, excess food and waste materials. I think these are some of the things that can be done to help climate change. Also, energy efficiency bulbs, switching off electrical items or appliances when you're not using them. These are some of the things that can be done to help with climate change in St. Lucia.
Well, I think we as individuals can address climate change in two ways: mitigation and adaptation. By mitigating, we can use alternate sources of energy like wind and solar. For example, instead of washing your clothes every day, you can wash in your hands. Instead of using the dry cleaner, you can hang your clothes outside to dry by the wind and the sun. And we can reduce on the production of greenhouse gases, because that's the main cause of global warming, by carpooling. In an area, for example, in an area you live with your neighbors and all of you all have the same destination on a daily basis. So instead of using your individual vehicles, you can use one vehicle and contribute to fuel, and by doing that you reduce on the carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere.
so if you step on the phone, the other important thing that I try to do is the issue of recycling of water, rainwater, more like rainwater harvesting, not in a very commercial way. I mean, many of us grew up knowing that our families would use rainwater to do a lot of things. So the issue of recycling rainwater is also a practice that I do as an individual as well, in terms of my small contribution.
Let's move to our second question. We stayed with the issue of climate change because we felt that this was one that had to be approached from multiple levels and angles. We asked the people, what is your solution to deal with the effects of climate change on a national or governmental level? Let's hear some of the solutions.
Yeah, global change and climate change is a big consideration these days, and it is very important for the future generations. And I personally believe a lot can be done. People must change their attitude, their lifestyle, especially when it comes to the energy consumption. So one of the primary things that we can do is, and sustainable and very doable, is change our source of energy, especially here in St. Lucia, where there's plenty of wind. You have the trade winds blowing all year round, so wind generation is excellent. I have no idea why it's taking us so long. We have the sun. I don't know why it's taking us so long. We have copra for biodiesel and other products that we can use and get out of the dependence on fossil fuels that really disturb the environment. So the St. Lucian government should really look into sustainable development as far as energy consumption is concerned. But there are others that'll take me 2-3 hours to discuss. But let's start with energy consumption first.
What I can say first, they have to tackle the big corporations first, because you know, when they catch a cold, we are the one that sneeze. So the big corporation, if they stop whatever they're doing, then we can do something with climate change.
Well, I think that's a very important issue, not just for large countries, but also for small island states like ourselves. And I think that investing heavily in solar energy or some sort of renewable resource, energy source that is. From what I've seen, solar is now at a price where it is very affordable and makes it's highly feasible. I would urge everybody, domestic and commercial, to go into invest heavily into solar. And of course, I'm sure there's probably many websites that one can visit to either calculate, calculate your carbon footprint, and they'll have many tips there on those websites how to reduce your carbon footprint, be it carpooling or just little things at home that you can do to help it. So that's what I would suggest to everybody.
So for climate change, to reduce the effects of climate change, I think the government should educate the people about it, because they don't know a simple thing as in turning off a light or fixing a faucet or something like that could help it. And us too, we could walk, we could carpool, we could use bicycles and stuff like that instead of using cars, and that reduces the emission of that greenhouse gases into the air. So I think that the government should educate the people. They should also try to invest in research to make the people know.
Okay, the issue of climate change is not something that is quite new to St. Lucia. It's not new to the world. Now, though the Caribbean islands are not great emitters of fossil fuels and greenhouse gases, we are the ones exposed the greatest to the impacts of climate change. Now, little can be done by the government, because changing the way we do things here is not going to make a big impact. What they would need to do is to show those big emitters of the greenhouse gases that we are taking a stand in the Caribbean. They need to let them know that what they are doing is actually affecting us. And there are very simple ways of doing that. We, the government here and the people in St. Lucia, we're actually the one funding the impacts of climate change. Every time we buy products which use fossil fuels and produce greenhouse gases from these metropolitan countries, we are actually saying, yes, go ahead, we don't care. Yet still we are signing petitions saying, oh, we're going to fight climate change. How can we fight climate change when the root of it, we are actually funding it? So the government to take a stand as the entire Caribbean and say, you know what, we are not going to promote any activity which is going to compromise our future and compromise the sustainability
and the livelihoods of people in St. Lucia, then people in St. Lucia need to realize that every single action done by each person is going to affect the entire community. It is not an issue that global warming is only affecting the people in ancillary, climate change affecting the people in Soufrière. One action done by one person affects the entire world. So we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be able to change our behaviors so at the end of the day, what we leave for the people tomorrow is something quite sustainable and something that they can all look forward to. So climate change should be on our lip, should be our lifestyle changes, should be our thoughts, should be an attitude. It's not a matter of one person doing it. We all have to come together and see what we can do to save our island.
More solutions coming up after this break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Solutions on Choice TV. We asked the people, what is your solution to deal with the effects of climate change on a national or governmental level?
Well, the government could invest in solar energy street lights, and they could also liaise with Flusilec to produce cleaner energy from sources such as the wind and the sun. They could also provide a public transport system that uses larger buses so we reduce on the amount of vehicles on the road, lessening our CO2 emissions. They could also reduce, reuse, and recycle. We could teach that to the younger generation. And I, as an individual, I am starting to use both sides of paper. I'm using less paper as a result. I am also picking up after my peers when they litter, also encouraging them not to litter. And I am turning off appliances when not in use. Thank you.
I think that governments could mitigate the responses by investing in alternative sources of energy, by renewable resources, example wind farms and geothermal energy. Since solar panels are very costly today, governments could have grants or subsidies on them to reduce the cost, making them more available to the public, hence encouraging the use by locals. Governments could also adapt to it by one, hazard mapping to relocate persons in flood-prone areas. Two, they could promote new development inland so that if sea level rises, there will be less risk.
Climate change is caused by various greenhouse gases and an effect of global warming. So I think that climate change can be helped by if the government is helping, they can start campaigns where people try to stop polluting the area and stuff like that. And I, as an individual, I think that we have an environmental club group in St. Mary's College. So I think the group can get together, have a meeting, and they can talk about the various things that affect climate change, and they could have a cleanup or something like that.
Well, that's it from the streets. Let's wrap up. Climate change is potentially the most serious and irreversible threat facing human societies and the planet today. Small island states like our own are most at risk from the consequences of climate change and global warming, even though we are responsible for an almost negligible contribution to humanity's carbon footprint. The Antarctic ice cap contains almost 90% of the world's ice. That's about 70% of all the fresh water on Earth. If that were to melt, the ocean levels would rise up to about 200 feet. That means the Groseley Street Party would be at Babonneau unless you can dance underwater. The port entry at Castries would be somewhere at the top of Mondador or the Mon. Canneries, Ancillary, Dennery, Castries, all these communities would be underwater. Now, it would take an event of super cataclysmic proportions to raise temperatures so high that all the ice melts in a year. And if it was so hot anyway, we would most likely not survive. But still, we have to do our part to reduce our carbon footprint and lower carbon emissions. Here are a few. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce waste by choosing reusable products instead of disposables. And whenever you can, recycle paper, plastic, newspaper, glass, and aluminum cans. Change a light bulb. Wherever practical, replace regular light bulbs with compact fluorescent light bulbs. Replacing just one 60-watt incandescent light bulb with a CFL will save you $30 over the life of the bulb. Drive less and drive smart. Less driving means fewer emissions. Besides saving gasoline, walking and biking are great forms of exercise. When you do drive, make sure your car is running efficiently. For example, keeping your tires properly inflated can improve your gas mileage by more than 3%. Every gallon of gas you save not only helps your budget, it also keeps 20 pounds of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Buy energy-efficient products. Home appliances now come in a range of energy-efficient models, and compact fluorescent bulbs are designed to provide more natural-looking light while using far less energy than standard light bulbs. When buying new products for your home, look for EPA's Energy Star label to help you make the most energy-efficient decision. You could find the Energy Star label on more than 60 kinds of products, including appliances, lighting, heating and cooling equipment, electronics, and office equipment. Use the off switch. Save electricity and reduce global warming by turning off lights when you leave a room and using only as much light as you need. And remember to turn off your television, your video player, your stereo, and computer when you're not using them. Plant a tree. If you have the means to plant a tree, start digging. During photosynthesis, trees and other plants absorb carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. They are an integral part of the natural atmospheric exchange cycle here on Earth, but there are too few of them to fully counter the increases in carbon dioxide caused by automobile traffic, manufacturing, and other human activities. A single tree will absorb approximately 1 ton of carbon dioxide during its lifetime. Be green in your yard. Composting food and yard waste reduces the amount of garbage that you send to landfills and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Encourage others to conserve. Share information about recycling and energy conservation with your friends, your neighbors, co-workers, and most importantly, that's too soft. Put pressure on public officials to establish programs and policies that are good for the environment. The government is already doing its part through OECS programs like the RAC projects. OECS governments have recognized that reducing vulnerability to climate stresses is essential to the region's strategy towards adaptation to climate change. And building climate-conscious people who are better adapted to the potential impact of climate change is a key element of the strategy to deal with impending climate change. As a result, the RAC project has as a key objective create awareness and achieve behavioral change that leads to climate-conscious living. According to the Cancun Adaptation Framework of 2010, climate change is recognized as one of the most pressing global challenges of our time, and it has been agreed that adaptation must be addressed with the same priority as mitigation. Adaptation has been defined as a process where an organism becomes better able to live within its habitat. This process involves behavioral adaptations that are learned and in the long term become unconscious habits. Major changes in the habitat will require changes in habits and behavior to suit changes within the habitat. Like MJ said, time to make that change. Heal the world. That's it for today. If you have something today we want to hear, look out for the Choice TV crew for a chance to present your solution to the country. Now, if you have a burning question you want us to ask the people, we can do that too. Send us an email with your hot burning issue at solucian@choice39.tv. That's SOLUCIAN @choice39.tv. Join us again next week for more Solutions.
Not everyone that's in the prison that is guilty, but we have a university center criminal.